Good evening and welcome to The Real Study with your hosts, MrSniDBitS,
I don't have a problem with him, but I don't think he's that and a bag of chips.
BlackGirlMarvel,
I cried laughing. That was hilarious.
Tylermakesfilms.
That was like our favorite movie for some reason. I mean, it was really good. I enjoyed that movie.
Allthemoviethings.
I think the thing why I enjoyed it more too was the fact that we were going to talk about it from this perspective.
The pre-review with Blindbiggie.
Hey, this is Blindbiggie. Welcome to the pre-review.
And me, the Real Study movie voice guy.
I'm the Real Study movie voice guy.
Let's go to the poster wall.
Good evening and welcome to The Real Study. I am MrSniDBitS, and as always with me tonight, we've got all the movie things as well as Tylermakesfilms. No cell phone wallet and keys or BlackGirlMarvel tonight. We will have BlackGirlMarvel back next week, so we're excited. We will be reviewing Wakanda Forever, as you've seen on our poster wall, as well as I think we're doing The Woman King and then Girls Trip, so look forward to that. Tonight, we are covering three different films from three different black directors, and we are looking at Do the Right Thing from Spike Lee, Fruitvale Station from Ryan Coogler, and then Judas and the Black Messiah from Shaka King, but also produced by Ryan Coogler. So definitely three heavy-duty films, some great films, but still a lot to talk about here. So how are you guys doing this evening?
Pretty good. I did a bunch of shoots this weekend, so
Oh man,
That's
fun.
exciting.
Tired, but really
yeah, I was gonna say you're probably beat.
I bet. I bet. How about you, Brian? Good week? Less busy, maybe?
Oh no, no,
It's never less busy.
well, I mean, not until I get back from Thailand, then it'll be less busy. So
That's fair. That's fair.
once that happens, yeah, we just have so much to do before we leave.
Well, and that's going to be in a couple of weeks. So you guys are going to, of course, miss Brian here soon as he does go abroad. So you know we'll miss you, but we'll tell you what we're doing while you're gone. Of course, as always, if you haven't already started following us on Instagram, Twitter, Discord, Facebook, you name it, we are on it, and as well as Apple and Anchor, where you can catch the podcast in its true form, all audio, no video. Well, occasionally video, depends on how we do it. But ultimately, we are here to talk about three movies, and I think we're going to take these in not chronological order, but release order. And the first movie is, of course, Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. This is a 1989 release starring Spike Lee, Danny Aiello, and a cast of, even Giancarlo Esposito. I always mess up his name.
Yeah,
It's a difficult one. But yes, ultimately, some big names in what is kind of a smaller production, and Spike Lee's first major film. I think he had done other films before this, but this was the one that got him on the map, if you will. It's Janine the Bean. Hello, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in the chat in a little while, so good to see you and say hi. So why don't we just start as we always do with one of you guys? Let's go with just Brian right out the gate. What is your, thought? Had you seen Do the Right Thing before reviewing? What did you think?
yeah. So Do the Right Thing. Yeah, I've seen this. It's been a long time since I've seen it. Yeah, and I love it. It's just like it's a pretty damn near perfect film. I would say, like, and I was thinking about it today too, like how I was going to talk about it. We'll talk about how I was going to talk about all these films, and this is one of those films where it still stands the test of time, but also like I hate to say that it's still like relevant,
Yeah.
So it's like I would like to not have to say that, but there's still all kinds of things to recognize, that things that are happening, like that people of color have been talking about for decades and hundreds of years, really. And and this thing is just like it's all over the place. I mean, it's so good. The cinematography is good. There's like so many great like camera things he's trying. I do think like Spike Lee as an actor isn't the best, but there's still some things. But he's he's smart though. Like he's surrounded himself with incredible supporting cast. You know, Danny Aiello is like, I mean, he's given it. Everyone. I mean, the opening is like classic. You know, like it's so good. It's so vibrant too. Like the color is just like, just all around great. I mean, the music, it's. I mean, it's.
You mean Public Enemy for an hour? And a half?
Public Enemy. Radio Raheem,
right.
And then and there's a reason it's like in the Criterion Collection, you know, and everything. So
there is a reason. How about you, Tyler? What do you think of Do the Right Thing?
I'll admit this is my very first time watching it. After it being on my list forever. And I bought the Criterion, so I was like, cool, now I can finally bust this thing open.
That's awesome.
Everything Brian said, like, man, right off the bat with that opening. And so I was like, man, I'm in, like, whatever this is. And then on top of like what you said too, like how I think relevant it is to nowadays. And it's funny watching it now because I've like stepped away from like social media and TikTok, and I've kind of like been on this thing where like like the way that people argue or talk about certain issues, especially on TikTok, has been difficult, and I think this movie really like captures that. Because like to me, like, man, when people like talk about certain issues and they also fight it with hate, it's like, I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, it also is, and it's also possible that the other thing can exist too, where like it is still hate, like, and you know, it may or may not be as might not help anything in the end. But we can get into like themes later on. I love all the performances, the cinematography. It's crazy that like this movie, especially with like its color palette, man, I felt like the heat during this.
You feel it's hot.
It's crazy. Like there's movies that do it, right? You know, it's like the yellow tone. It's like it's warm, but this one really felt like, man, I was sweating with them. Like
No, there were moments where people are in the sun during the peak of the day, and you're like, why aren't you in the shade, dude? What are you doing? Get out of the sun. I felt that as well. I had seen this back basically in my high school era, you know, because it had made it to videotape by the time I was in high school. And so I didn't see it in theaters. I would have been, 12? So that was nobody was going to take me to this movie. But by the time I was a teenager, I watched it. And I think I expected something different then. But looking at it now, this movie has stuck with me for days. I watched it, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday, pretty early on in the week. And it's just rolling in my head. It's just constantly playing over and over because it brings up a lot that's not just... There's no clear-cut answer in this film. And I think that's what I really like about it, is that there's nobody's trying to make the claim that they know. Like Spike Lee's not even trying to make the claim that he understands this or has the solution. He was just presenting it and showing it to people in a way that really hadn't been done before. I think the irony is that we are, and it's a terrible irony, but we are still in an exact world. I mean, the third film in our series tonight, the one in chronological order, I guess, that would have taken place in 2008, it's the same exact thing. I mean, we're not dealing with anything different. So it is a talking piece for the time, for the Reagan era, for everything since then, I would say. So it is 90s though. Like everything in it, even though it's 89, it still feels like that pop of color from the early 90s. Like you could have taken a lot of these characters and they would have shown up as different people in living color or something, because it had that same kind of pop of color and vibrancy. And some of the characters were a little over the top in a fun, ridiculous way. The Martin Lawrence character, who just kind of, Martin Lawrence is a young guy, you know, just showing up with a lisp. And that was his first role, I believe. This was also Rosie Perez's first role. And apparently Spike Lee found her at a dance club, and she was dancing on a speaker for like at a party for the previous film he had done. And he was like, get down off that speaker. And she like cussed him out and told him what a piece of shit he was. And he was like, I love your voice. Come be in my movie. And so she did.
And that's essentially what she does in the movie. She's just cussing out the whole time.
Exactly. So it was perfect. It was like her audition.
Yeah.
Apparently, also, because I read a bunch of trivia on this one because I was just like, wow, I got to know more. That whole opening sequence with Rosie, which was based on a movie from the 60s, I believe. It took them like a whole weekend to shoot that or something like that. Like she just was dancing her ass off for hours on end. And that's why you kind of see it in her face. She looks strained in some of those shots where she's just like, damn, I've been doing this all day. So yeah, I'm not going to disagree. The one thing about cinematography that I wanted to point out that I really liked was the moment where it was DeMayer and sister, is it mother sister? I think it's mother sister. Are talking like for the second time, and he's trying to kind of court her a little bit, and the camera is angled at him like this, and then when it goes back to mother sister, it's angled like
there's
that.
a lot of Dutch angles in this,
right?
Yeah.
And for me, it was because he had started drinking. There was an element of this is like he's seeing the world at a tilt. And then it also kind of juxtaposed them, one tilted this way, one tilted that way, like two different worlds. And it was like multiple things being said with just this simple but direct camera angle. And that's the genius, I think, of Spike Lee, is he's just knew that, like some directors just kind of know this stuff. So anyway, I digress. I could probably go on forever, but I want to hear.
Well, there's another scene. There's another scene with the two of them that I really like too, where I think it's going from the daytime to nighttime, and it's so subtle, but you can see like the street lights start to come on, and like, it's just like a technical, like, holy crap.
No, totally, yeah.
No, definitely.
Again, great colors in that too.
Yeah,
in that whole sequence. There was one specific one that stood out for me was near the end of the film, where they follow Spike Lee, and it had to be like a crane, like a techno crane or something, because we're like following him through the apartment to the window, and then the camera continues out the window and comes down and booms down.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, it's so nice. It's like, yeah.
But they had to have done that like a couple, like, they rehearsed that.
Yeah, because it's coming out of a window, like,
and it's on film, so you got like,
exactly. Oh my god, yeah. Yeah, and those things aren't small either. I mean, the camera's not small. So it had to be pretty precise.
The going through the screen door was a lot like that. They did that a couple of times at the pizza parlor, and I like that because the screen is the way it is. You can, as soon as you zoom in, it's going to disappear, and they kind of played with that. I thought that was well done. You're right about Aiello's performance. As we know, they were going to try to get De Niro, but he was like, "You want me to play an Italian pizza parlor owner in Brooklyn?" Not sure I'm into that stereotype, right? Because it's about as stereotypical as you're going to get. But at the same time, there's a point to it in this story. It's obviously crucial to the story. But Aiello, I think, was the right choice. I don't think De Niro would have. I don't know. I feel like Aiello is the reason this works. I
think.
Good.
Yeah, I think with it being such like a smaller film too, you would have just saw De Niro.
Right. You
wouldn't have saw. Like with Aiello, he kind of like, he's still like a well-respected actor, but he wasn't this big thing like De Niro, you know what I mean? And so Aiello was able to kind of like bleed into that character more and kind of just be seen as the character rather than, oh, it's, Robert De Niro kind of thing. I think that's kind of a risk sometimes, when you get, and I understand it too from a marketing perspective, like we got to get someone. I mean, that's what they did with Superman. Christopher Reeve, no one knew who Christopher Reeve was, so there was like, okay, who are the big names right now? And it's Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman. So that's why like they're billed above Christopher Reeve, even in the poster and like even in the trailers, they pushed Brando and Hackman more, even though like they're not they're neither of them playing Superman.
No, so but Hackman steals the show in a lot of ways in that
he does role, but really the thing is like they had to do it from a marketing perspective to get people to get interested, I think. But at the same time, you run that risk of like, well, it's just Gene Hackman and Marlon Brando. Like you don't see them as Jor-El and Lex Luthor.
Right.
So I think it's a similar kind of thing. It's like, it's a balancing act. And we do get a shot of De Niro in there.
Right.
Because he's a picture on the wall.
Isn't he also during the scene where it's burning? So he's like, we get to see him.
Right.
Almost like... There's almost like a little slap,
yeah, maybe.
What it feels like.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, because Sinatra, De Niro, and I think I think most of them that we see in the first shot are also in the final shot being burned.
Yeah.
There was another one that was Radio Raheem was actually they approached Lawrence Fishburne for that role and he turned it down. So that would have been interesting to see, you know, somebody completely different. And of course, we all, you know, I've seen the actor that plays Radio Raheem in quite a few things. Most of the actors in this that are kind of background characters, I've seen in a lot, and they're great. I think they did such a brilliant job. I really liked the moment where Mookie goes over to Radio Raheem for the first time and says hello, and then he shows him his new, you know, knuckles, and he's got that love and hate, and they move the camera right in front of Mookie, so we're just like watching what Mookie was seeing exactly, and then they step right back out of that. That was, I mean, he did a lot of little clever things that could have been considered gimmicky, but he did them once and he did them right, which I think.
There's a lot of, there's a lot of like, I don't want to say it's experimental, but he was playing with a lot of stuff. Like I had mentioned, like he's breaking the fourth wall. You know, a bunch in this. And there's like, it's funny too, because like those knuckle things he had are very reflective.
Right, you could see the camera.
See the camera in there, and they would adjust to like, you know, it's like, man, I love that.
Well, he even had to like hold them up a little more at the right
exactly.
angle, you know, all of that. So, no, it's wild. This movie doesn't seem like it's going to have the ending it has as it goes through. You know, you go through and it almost feels like, oh, this is just like another summer movie. Like, okay, this is what it's like in Brooklyn in the summer. You know, dealing with many of the things that you would deal with, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like it's gonna have that turn. And when it turns left hard, it's shocking, I would say, to say the least. And because we're a spoiler show, we are going to get into this. So you know, my immediate thought after the movie was, why did Mookie throw the trash can? Right? Why Mookie? Right? Of all the people on the street that were going to start this, you know, attack on Sal and the pizzeria, why Mookie? And it's this is where it gets interesting, because there's no definitive answer. And even Spike Lee, you know, doesn't say it. He just kind of talks about it loosely. And I think for a reason, much like artists with their lyrics, you know, he wants to keep it open. So what do you guys think? Why did Mookie throw the trash can?
It kind of like what the thing, I forgot, we talked about this before, where because for me it's supposed to be a moment you're like, oh, why did he do it? But it's like the other half is, but yeah, it's totally makes sense that he would react that way, because how else would you react? Like, you know, people have not given you anything else, you know, and that's the weapons that you have. And, you know, sometimes violence is all you got left. And maybe that's all, you know, we've seen him sort of slowly break down as the movie goes along until this final moment where, like, Radio Raheem, like someone who completely did not deserve, and anybody in that movie does not deserve the things that's happening to them. But, you know, and I guess that was like finally his boiling point. But yeah, I think it's meant for us to kind of contemplate, like, I don't think his response to me is completely appropriate. Like, it makes sense that he would react that way.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think, I mean, there's multiple ways around it that you could, you know, like I can't speak to like anything of experience, of course, but I think from like an analysis perspective, you can look at it as, and like you talked about it, Tyler, where like they both had their breaking point, and they kind of like kind of everything escalates, you know, and the whole movie, Mookie's kind of like trying to keep the peace, and he's trying to like, but it's also at the request a little bit of Sal, and just really, it's almost like a self-preservation thing too, in a way. Like he's just trying to keep his job, you know what I mean, and trying to keep the peace here, and like but at the same time too, there's like Sal's two sons are also like pressuring Sal in a lot of ways, especially John Turturro. And so I think there's those two warring factions, and then like, and Mookie's getting pressure I imagine he's getting pressure from the neighborhood because like people kind of look up to him in the neighborhood. Everyone knows who he is in the neighborhood, and yeah, I think finally Mookie just is like, feels like maybe he's the one that has to do it because he's kind of like, he knows there's this pressure valve that has to be released and that no one else is going to do it. So he sacrifices all that, to kind of like help release the pressure of the neighborhood, in a way.
Because that's the thing too. Like oh my bad.
Oh, I thought I had my stuff unmuted. So rather than let the neighborhood who was on the boiling point just kill Sal and the sons and just go to the extreme end, he almost like re-guided that energy to the restaurant rather than the humans, in a sense. It's one way I kind of looked at it, was this basically says, okay, burn the store, leave the people, rather than, because they were still ready to go after them. They even said it, like, get them. And then, of course, they turn around and go after the Korean family across the street, which is a weird, almost humorous exchange once that kind of boils down to they let them, they leave them be. So we got Aina and Janine giving their thoughts on why the trash can was thrown. Aina says what Mookie did relates to the two quotes from Malcolm X and Martin Luther King at the end of the movie. Basically, he was the balance of both, right? He is both Malcolm and Martin. And then Janine says Mookie is somewhat self-involved and neutral, so I think it speaks to the impact what happens to Raheem being powerful enough to make the least active person take action. Ooh, that's a good point too. I like that. Thank you for your input, guys. We appreciate that.
I almost wonder if like some of his wardrobe is saying something. It's just something that I noticed, but I mean, wardrobe usually does mean something in film, but like he wears like all kinds of different things, but he wears like a couple of jerseys. He wears number 42 Dodgers jersey. He wears I think he's wearing a Jordan jersey in the beginning.
No, it's the 42 Dodger jersey. I think he wears two shirts, the 42 Dodgers jersey and then the Sal's Pizzeria shirt.
No, he's wearing a Chicago Bulls jersey in the very beginning.
Really?
Yeah, and then he changed to the Dodgers jersey.
Maybe I did
like in the opening of the
part.
film.
Right.
Yeah, he's got a Chicago Bulls jersey on, and then he then he changes into Sal's shirt for the whole thing, which is when he's wearing that shirt when he throws the trash can in there, which I thought was kind of an ironic thing.
Let's see here.
I wonder if it's like because like he's like a player, like it feels like he's playing. He's a piece in the the same machine that runs the same way over and over.
Yeah,
and then at the end, like that's what makes it so tragic because like Sal had this whole thing where he's like, "Hey, like you'll always have a job here, like you're like family kind of thing." It's just such a betrayal when that like.
Well,
when it came down to it, he really didn't have his back. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like Sal didn't. He was just like,
well, and we also find out that Sal's closer to his son Totoro character rather than his son Vito, because he's holding under the surface for even 25 years. And he says, I love these people. I will always feed these people. These people have memories of my food from their childhood. And then the moment that things go the wrong way, he turns on a dime and starts becoming racist. And which is expected. I mean, it is. That's real life. People hide that shit as much as they can until it boils to the surface, and then you get to see their true colors. And I think there's definitely something to be said about that. What about the neighborhood characters? Because there are some great neighborhood characters. DeMayer, played by the great late Ozzie Davis, who is fantastic. And then, of course, Mother Sister, and then the group of kids that are like, they feel like maybe they're 17, but they could be 20. But they're running around harassing people, even though they're being lazy and not doing anything today. But they're like, get a job to people. I thought that was very interesting. Giancarlo's character, when I went back and watched this, I was like, what? That's the bad guy from Breaking Bad. That's the bad guy from Mandalorian. Well, because the glasses really change the way he looks. Like they really, really do. Because even if you look at him then without the glasses on, he looks the way you expect. But it's shocking how different he looks. And then, of course, there is the hint of irony in the fact that Giancarlo is an Italian Black American. So he's actually a little bit of both, but causing this ruckus at the beginning of the movie about there being no Black guys on the wall, or Black people on the wall, which is interesting. He's over the top, but I think it really works for the character. Let's see, who else did I see? Frankie Faison, who, you know, you might not know by his name, but, you know, he's in Coming to America, White Chicks, and a few other films. So people like that, where you're like, oh, hey, I know that guy. You know, like the, hey, I know that guy actors.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Sam Jackson, which, of course,
he's kind of like the neighborhood narrator.
Right. And you can't not have a movie set between 1985 and now without Sam Jackson in it. Like, it just feels like a rule. Because he's in everything. Let's see. Who else?
The scene with Samuel L. Jackson, he's like in the background. He's like, my pizza. I think he has my pizza. Like, he's not bringing it in here. Just like, what the fuck?
Oh yeah, Ruby Dee. That's what I was trying to remember her name.
Yeah.
She's been around a long time as well. She's fantastic. It's interesting because Spike Lee got a lot of hate for this film. You know, releasing in 1989. This is just like post Ronald Reagan. This is pre LA riots, which is really interesting. He even did an interview where he said that this movie did a lot of predicting of the 1990s. One, the LA riots happened 3 years later. And then the other one he said was gentrification, which is something that now is a pop term. But at that time, only sociologists and political scientists were even remotely speaking that word, and only to each other. You know, it wasn't something everybody was talking about. And yet they use the word in the film, and they show what it is. And it's like, again, that's way ahead of its time in a lot of ways, in some important ways, but then also in a lot of tragic ways. It's ahead of its time. But it is a light film for the most part, all the way through. It's got a lightness, an air of regular afternoon. I don't know. I think I might have said that earlier, but it's
it's like it's you know, a classic day in the life kind of film. You know, it's just like there's quite a few of those that it takes place in the course of a day, and and you get introduced to all these characters, and you essentially get a feel of like what that neighborhood is like. You know, and everything. Just, I mean, from the weather, even, and just like the daily life that it must be like to like live there, and like have everyone kind of knows each other, you know, and there's these outlandish characters that you kind of tolerate. You know, I think the mayor, they kind of like just kind of tolerate him in a lot of ways, and just kind of like, but also at the same time respect him because he's an older guy and everything, and they kind of just let him do what he does. And
right.
I do love like the little, it's like they do such a good job of having a lot of these characters have arcs. Like Ruby Dee and Ozzie Davis, they have their own kind of arc with each other. You know, there's this little story within this movie between the two of them, and that one's really great. And then the overarching arc of just like the neighborhood itself, you know, coming to this boiling point.
I'm almost wondering if because like this story could be super messy with as many like the ensemble of characters that's in it. And I don't know, this is just from me like looking at it from like a script writing standpoint too, but like all the characters are sort of grouped together by like generations almost. And like those generations reacting and like seeing how they react to the same situation. And I love that, like, especially like the older generation, the way that they handle it, it's like, no, we shouldn't be fighting, guys. Like they've lived through it. They're like, it's not the answer. Yeah. And then you have like the teenagers who have like all that angst, and they're like, you know. So I thought that was like a really good way to like thread everything, so it wasn't confusing.
Yeah.
There was also the moment which I thought was a really interesting kind of take, and it's during the burning of Sal's place. The fire department shows up and they start trying to put it out, but then some of the neighborhood people try to stop them from putting it out, and then the firefighters turn the hoses on them, which is of course completely indicative of the 1960s, and all the bus drives and the marches and everything, where they would hose people, and it was definitely very strong kind of throwbacks to that era, so that you could feel the sense of what people were feeling from then. So I could imagine DeMayer and and Mother seeing back to their time in the 60s, during that, and going, what's changed? What seems to have changed? And that's weird, because from the 60s to this movie, and then from this movie to now, nothing's changed at all. Like, not even, we haven't inched really anywhere. Nothing has changed, which is just flabbergasting to sit here and say that. And it's heavy. Yeah, no, this is a heavy movie in that sense. Like, this is not like a, let's laugh and giggle about this film. There's a lot here. So, I don't know, but it is something that I think is important. And I think that, there's a reason we pick a lot of the films we do on the show, but I think this is a film that everyone should watch. I think it should almost be required viewing, kind of across the board. Again, that's why it's in the Criterion Collection. That's why it's celebrated. That's why it went to Cannes. Because it is, that. I think AFI even put it in their top movies. I believe, what was the other one? Oh, the Library of Congress also inducted this movie because of its importance. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm just kind of rambling, but important, I think.
Yeah.
So, and welcome, Ray. I saw Ray come in, but didn't get to say hi. Glad you could make it. I've been I jumped into Ray's live this week on TikTok, because I'm finally back on TikTok. If anybody didn't notice, I'm back and just doing simple, fun movie content. So, any other thoughts you guys want to put out about Do the Right Thing?
Like there's a lot of like little, like cultural things in there, but like I think one for me that I actually like resonate with is like, I'm like a minor sneakerhead a little bit. So when his Jordans get scuffed, yeah, that hurt.
Well, the look on his face too is priceless. Like, he plays that part to perfection.
But it's like that's real. like, man, like, you don't want the crease. You don't want them, like, you don't want anything, especially those white ones, like, man, and like that little sky, and then he's like brushing it later on too. It's like, yeah, you gotta get that quick.
I love the reaction. They were like, the guy was like, "Oh, I'm from here. Like, I'm from Brooklyn."
Yeah,
I was born in
and they're like,
"Oh." I liked how all of his friends were like trying to make it worse. Like, they kept saying things to make it escalate. Yeah. They were like, "You really gonna let him step on your shoes? You really gonna, let this guy talk back to you? Come on, do something about it."
He really wasn't. He wasn't gonna do anything.
But no, we knew that's his character. He's an antagonist with nothing to back it up, right? He's all talk. And that's why he needed Radio Raheem, because Radio Raheem was huge and meant business. If he, people moved out of his way the whole movie, and except for maybe like Mookie, but everybody else, they even shut off the fire hose for Radio Raheem, or the fire hydrant. They were like, "Oh shit, let him through, let him through."
Yeah, and then that dude that drove through the car.
I was like, he's gonna get. No way.
As soon as he said, "It's a classic. Don't mess with my car." Like, go around to another block, dude.
Man.
What are you doing?
Yeah, you're really worried about it.
Dude, it's a hot day. They're trying to cool off. Like, yeah. And that did not look like that much fun. They pulled some of the girls in and like soaked them. It looked painful to me. I mean, that's just me, but yeah.
Oh, I did like that one. There's one scene I just want to talk about. Is the montage of everyone saying like super terrible racist stuff, and like,
I was gonna talk about that too.
I hate that. I love that scene though, because I think it really captures like, look how crazy it seems crazy, but it's like, this exists like out in the real world, and now it's in your face, and it's just like, oh, this is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, yikes. Like,
I think like my theory behind that is like, I think that was his way of saying like, they're not actually saying this out loud, but it's actually what's internalized. Like, this is what they're thinking, you know, what people are thinking, you know, multiple times a day even, and they're just like, you know, spewing it out to you. Like, yeah, and like the camera move is very intentional, you know. It's like, man, yeah.
Wasn't this?
And I don't think like it's. Oh my bad.
No, please go ahead.
And like, I don't think it's like meant to. Like, yeah, it's definitely. I think it's like everything internalized. But it's also like it's crazy that people need to realize that like we all have. That's why it's so uncomfortable.
Oh yeah,
because like we all have this.
Yeah.
And like, whether we want to admit it or not, like,
right.
Well, that's
the thing is like recognizing it,
right?
You know what I mean? And then like, what do you do about it after that? When you know, so move on from it and try to grow.
Brian and I are similar in age, and we're both white guys that grew up on the West Coast to some degree. I'm not fully West Coast, but I've been over here for a long time, since I was a kid. And I can tell you without a doubt that growing up in the culture that I did, and in San Francisco when I did, because I was in San Francisco going to high school when the LA riots happened, and there were marches even up in the Bay. Like there were marches everywhere when that happened. And I thought I understood what side, I stood, and philosophically and morally I did. I even marched with people. Like I was out there trying to do the right thing even then. But looking back now, I know that being a white person in that society then, I was being trained to believe things that were just untrue. And I still look back to times when I was a teenager where everybody told everybody that black people were a problem, especially black men. They were very dangerous and it was going to be terrible, and it was everything in the news, everything even in movies to some degree. So movies like this were kind of twisting that dialogue and showing people like myself that wasn't the case. And it didn't end there. It took me years to finally realize that people are just people. But I grew up in a culture that wasn't the case. And I was a totally liberal, army brat. So there was even, people of all colors on the bases, all of these things. And I still had that internalized bullshit that I couldn't just get rid of because I didn't know I had it. It was something that was so ingrained in our society that I don't know a white person alive that could admit they never had a negative thought based upon how we were taught to think. And that's hard to admit, even especially here on a live show. But at the same time, I've come a long way and still feel like I have so much to learn about all of this. And that's why I think watching movies like this is vital. I mean, if you're not willing to even just put on this film and discuss it, you have a long way to go. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox, but it was definitely, looking back even today, this week, especially watching some of these movies, I was like, man, it really was an era where you were taught as a white person to be afraid of people of color, like we were. And it's disgusting looking back, but this movie gets right at the heart of that. So, yeah.
I like what you said about discussion. Like, I think that's like one of the main takeaways for me, at least from this movie, was like,
yeah,
I feel like a lot of people aren't willing to have discussions anymore. Like, it's just, especially with, I think, the way the social media is, it's like there's no room for discussion. Like,
oh yeah,
you're either one side or the other, and if you're not one side, you are the other. Like,
yeah, it's that whole nuance thing where like people don't understand that there's a lot of gray, and that we need to like, I mean, a lot of it's listening, for me anyway. It's just like, and that goes for anything, like removing a lot of the like any kind of patriarchal systemic stuff that has been ingrained in me. And like my birth dad was like very much, and of course he has his own like stuff that he grew up with too, but like he was racist, he was very much misogynist, even though like it wasn't like he was like a card carrying member of something and just out there spewing things, but it was the way he carried himself and certain things he would say that would be like jokes, and even then as a kid I was like, I don't know about that. That's supposed to be funny, but it's your dad, so you're like, it's funny,
Right.
But
this is the authority figure that's teaching you. You're supposed to believe them.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, yeah. And yeah, I think that it's just really just been like, for me, it's been like just listening. Like first, like I mentioned, like recognizing it. and like, you know, knowing that like this isn't sustainable and it's not, you know, and then it's just like, okay, where do I find the people that actually have this experience? So it's been fascinating, you know, just like, just shut up. That's all you got to do. You just listen.
You are not wrong.
I'll say like I was lucky because like, I mean, lucky. I didn't have a dad for like when most of my childhood. I had my mom, so I've always been in like social anxiety, crippling, like existential, like, well, there's more than one answer to things, and like it's not as easy as just like, oh yeah, that's the way it is. She's like, well, I mean, you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
But that's the truth of all of them. I mean, that's why everything's subjective. If there was just one clear answer, we wouldn't have subjectivity. We would just be like, this is A, this is B, we're done. But nothing on this planet seems to be that way. I guess there are some exceptions, but again, there's an exception to all rules. But as a rule, nuance is the rule. There are gonna always be 10 sides, you know, to any one thing, if you're willing to dig deep enough. And that was something that I learned, well, at least, you know, as I got into my 20s, that I need to really look at every possible position. And that's empathy, and that's hard as hell for people, but I get why. It's not easy to empathize, because you have to take time and actually stop and listen, as Brian said.
Yeah,
and
it's an active thing.
Right, and then put yourself in the shoes and literally try to imagine it. And if you have there's some people that struggle with having imagination, so that would be hard for them to be empathetic almost immediately. And then there are people that put up a barrier, you know, and have said, no, I don't even want to try, you know, and getting through those.
Well, there's also people that confuse. People think sympathy is empathy too. There's still people out there like that don't understand there's a huge difference between the two.
Right. No,
where sympathy is just very passive.
Right. Where you go, oh, I get that. You know, oh, I've had a cold. I understand what it's like to have a cold. Right.
Brene Brown is a great example of it. And there's actually this like animated thing with it, with this presentation she did. And we talk about this at work quite a bit, but she talks like sympathy is like if someone falls down a hole and hurts themselves. Sympathy is you kind of like, you know, peeking into the hole down at them and be like, oh man, that's bad.
That sucks.
I'm sorry that happened. You know, empathy is you actually going down in the hole with the person and like experiencing that.
Right. Or even helping them crawl back out if possible.
Right.
Which you're not always able to help them crawl out, but at least get down in there and see what it's like. At least. Brene Brown that tells me a lot about your work culture, because she's got a very particular mindset, which is beautiful. I love her lectures.
Brene Brown books all over.
Oh yeah, no, she's
place.
Her TED Talks and her special, all really great. If you don't know Brene Brown, if you want to talk about empathy, she is definitely worth talking about or listening to. Yeah, no, this is I like this discussion. This is good. This is where I was hoping we would go, is that we would talk about trying to understand people that we are not, and that's huge, and something that not enough people do. I think in a way social media has helped that. I think it's hurt it too, without a doubt. We could talk about both, but I think the fact that on social media I could just get on and somebody's like, oh, you like movies? I like movies, and only movies have brought this panel together. It's literally what brought us all here. Ray saying she has a connection issue. I'm not watching because I'm here. So have you guys been watching at all to see if there's a connection issue at all?
Yeah, I mean, it looks good on my end.
Okay. So if you guys think it's good, then we'll say that maybe just do a refresh, Ray, and then we can see how
I was having issues last week with that, where I had to keep refreshing.
Interesting. I'm not sure what that is,
like a
but
crazy delay.
I wish it wasn't that way, but I have no control over the world's internet, so I can only control this end of things. But yeah, I think that one of the things that was brought up prior to this show was we are, you know, two white guys, you know, and a person of color on a panel without a single black person talking about 3 films about black people. Is there a concern there? And my immediate thought is, maybe, you know, should we discuss this? Is this an issue?
It did dawn on me too. I was like, how am I going to talk about this?
But at the same time,
you know,
if white people aren't, or people that are not black looking at black culture or black film aren't willing to just watch them and engage and at least see what they make them feel and talk about them from their perspective, then what's the point? It seems odd to say we should have to have a black person on the panel to talk about black film, because then in a sense that defeats the purpose, right? That's not having people watch it because they should or want to. You know, I've wanted to see both of the films that I didn't see before this, and really wanted to rewatch Do the Right Thing for years. Like they've been on my list for a while.
Same.
Judas and the Black Messiah since it came out, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. I might be wrong, but again, this is nuanced, and I think that it's important to have these discussions no matter who's involved in them. And you know, I can't speak to the black perspective, so I'm not going to. I'm not going to even attempt that. That would be wrong. And I hope that's okay. I hope it's okay that we're talking about these films, because I think it's important. So, and if it's not, please tell us why, so we can correct ourselves. So I'm open to all of it, as we've talked about before. Not so much on the show. We usually talk about this kind of stuff on the behind the scenes, but it's a discussion worth having. So anyway, any other thoughts on Do the Right Thing before we get to a couple other films, as well as Biggie's pre-review, which he did for us this week? Any other thoughts?
Oh, what a title.
Yeah.
What a title. It's like,
Right.
can you do the right thing? And
Yeah.
it's also like, what is the right thing?
Yeah. What does that mean? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like that Mookie gets told that, and it's one of those movies where they say the title in the movie, which is great, but it also it leads back to the trash can, right? In a sense, he's telling him to do the right thing, and we see what the end result of what he does is, and in a sense, we're seeing Ozzy's character say that is the right thing, because he does the right thing in the end.
Well, the thing too is like there's this like struggle all throughout the movie of like just that, like he at times thinks he's doing the right thing, like when he's trying to keep the peace in Sal's restaurant, like he thinks that's the right thing to do. So it's like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing. So, but he's doing the right thing by whom is he doing the right thing for? You know,
It's another good point.
So
another really great point. Yeah, no, this movie we could probably do an entire episode about this movie if we wanted to sit down and really, you know, take notes and write it out. This show is a little bit less formal than that. We've only had Brian do notes one time, and it was a great episode, but at the same time, it's a lot of work. So
was it the Roger Deakins episode?
Very much so. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
definitely was. Ray did say that she thinks that it's okay that we're doing this. Only engaging in discussions like this when there is a black person there automatically puts emotional labor on that person, and there is that to be said. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And if the person's in for it, like they're like, yeah, I'm down, then that's one thing. But to just assume,
yeah, and something I've heard too, that's been said is that like just because we have, you know, a person of color or a black person on the panel doesn't mean that necessarily like Ray had mentioned, the emotional labor part was also they don't necessarily represent the entire black experience. You know, they're still an individual, is the thing that we have to like. I mean, we're all individuals too. It's and it goes the same with like if we're talking about a woman's experience or, you know, any of those kind of things.
And is it like just for me? I had brought up the question too, because it's like something where for me, like, you know, if it comes to like Pacific Islander stuff or whatever, like there's a part of me that's like, oh, there should be, and then the other part of me is like, I mean, but again, yeah, the emotional labor. It's like, do we need to have that? But like to have. I think at least for myself, it was cool to at least bring up the question to us.
Sure.
And like, it was great that like, I love that our panel and everyone in our community is open to like discussing rather than like, why are you asking this?
Yeah. Right.
I would feel weird saying that. Like, to me, it feels obvious why people are asking, and more, I just want to do the right thing, if you will, if we're going to, you know, use movie puns. You know, and that's one of the reasons, Tyler, what I've never been like, hey, do you want to do an all Pacific Islander episode, which I am open for, but I also never just wanted to say, let's do that, because I want you to decide that that's what you want us to do. And and we would, you know. So yeah, there you go. There's that. So yeah. Aina also says, no problems, 2 thumbs up. Gotta like it. Thank you for helping us out and feeling a little better about this. Okay, so let us rate Do the Right Thing, and then we'll get right on into Fruitvale Station. And yeah, we'll go from there. Tyler, what did you think of Do the Right Thing?
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and do the right thing and give this a 10. It's a man. I'm just like, it's crazy. This movie is like, this is gonna sound crazy. It is. It reminds me of Everything Everywhere All at Once in the sense that like it's so emotionally resonant and it feels like a timeless movie. Like it's so relevant to like now and unfortunately probably years from now.
Right.
But even if we ever got this under control, which I do hope we do, this still will be relevant in the history of film and the history of
I mean, it'll be an important
culture.
like like moment in time that you want to look back on and be like, man, I mean,
because those
hopefully it won't be hopefully it won't be
history.
the year 3000 or anything like that. Look at this historical document back in the year 1980 whatever.
What if only the real study, right? What if only the real study survived the apocalypse and we were the
this is the only document they have to do the right thing?
Is these some episodes that we have? What if that was the case? Anyway, that would be fun.
Historical puns.
I like it. Would you have ever been able to watch this at 12? Would anybody have let you watch this? I know you
probably.
Have
I probably
would.
I'd probably not have gotten anything that was in that movie.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing too. I wouldn't like. Yeah, I have no idea what's going on.
Before I get to Brian, Aina brings up a good point, and I saw this in the trivia as well. So Spike Lee said at the last moment, Paramount asked him to change the ending where Mookie and Sal hug and are friends, and they sing "We Are the World."
That's hilarious. That
can't be real.
So
but I mean,
no, but it is real. This is what Spike Lee has said. He's gone on record saying this.
Yeah.
He also said that by Monday, Universal picked up the film. So he was like, "Nah, dude, we're not having that ending. It's going to be this ending or no ending."
That's
and
so funny.
He knew what he wanted.
It wouldn't have like. We probably wouldn't be talking about it right now.
No, it would have been. It would not have had the punch, the impact.
It wouldn't have. Yeah.
It would have been like, oh, that happened. Radi Rahim was killed, but the power.
But it's okay. Let's like, hey,
right.
At least your pizzeria is still standing.
Right. Your pizzeria,
right.
I would have been so upset.
Oh my god, that's why it's so laughable when you read that. You're just like, what?
Yeah, no, it's wild. Way. How about you, Brian? What did you think?
Yeah, it's a 10.
I'm just gonna say 10 as well because it is. It's 10. So, and then of course, I wish Law was at least in the chats. We could hear what she thought of as far as the rating. And I do want to hear her thoughts, but she's been so busy, and it's, Anyway, so we're gonna move on to Fruitvale Station, which is Ryan Coogler film, first film he ever made. Also starring Michael B. Jordan before his stardom, before he bounced into fame. I'm pretty sure this movie had something to do with that. And then really, Octavia Spencer would be the other big actress.
Yeah, she was like,
and a huge reason. Aina and Tyler put together a bunch of trivia, and one of them was that she would have failed, or the movie wouldn't have been finished had she not raised $1 million for it.
Yeah,
which is
wild. Also the budget was only $1 million.
I mean,
that's insane, man.
I mean, it looked like it was shot almost completely on location, so they just really.
Totally. Yeah. I'm sure some of it may have been guerrilla too. Like, like we're just gonna.
The Bart stuff makes me wonder. Like, did they like? Man, because they didn't. They'd have to get Bart to agree.
Yeah,
we're talking about a government
they'd have to
agency,
get permission to shoot
right?
on those platforms.
It's not. It's a.
There's also like permission from the city. Yeah, because
I think it's a county thing. It might even be California. No, Bay Area Rapid. I think it's California that does all the
regardless, they'd still have to get permission. Right. They'd probably have to pay a fee. They'd have to get documents and everything. And also like the use of like police and
those BART police vehicles looked real.
Yeah. So they gotta and the thing is they have to notify, the city that when they're gonna be shooting that, so they can notify other people that there's going to be these vehicles and fake cops running around but there's nothing going on, anytime so like in Do the Right Thing, there was like, I was thinking about that too. That was such a small film, but they still had like cop cars racing, like all this stuff happening, but they have to notify, but New York is so good with that kind of stuff. Like because there's so many movies that have been shot in New York that the New York Film Commission is just like on it.
You don't get to go to like New York will cater to a film.
Yeah.
They probably have a whole division of their police force that's used to blocking off areas for films.
Oh yeah.
I would assume LA does too, to some degree, though, because there's a lot of shoots that happen all over down there. So
yeah, that was actually something we had to do in film school. I don't know if you ever do that yet, Tyler, where we actually had to go through the process of like taking up parking spots for our vehicles and everything, and like at least for the city of Portland, you have to like pay all like the all day fee.
I think they have a version of that later on, but like it's literally just within the area of the school. So that
really? Oh, funny. Nice.
It's easier to get away with it.
Yeah, totally.
Permits.
Yeah.
So when this film was picked out of the bunch, when I saw it was Ryan Coogler, I'm like, okay, I understand why we picked this film. He's become quite a big director, and he's definitely made his mark on the scene. What I didn't know was, because I always wanted to watch it, but it was more, oh, it's a movie with Michael B. Jordan. What do we got here? In the first 2 minutes of the film, they show what really happened to Oscar and that night at the Fruitvale Station. And I went, oh shit, I remember this footage. And I used to live in the Bay Area, as I think I was mentioning earlier. I lived in California and West Coast. And so, I've ridden BART. I've been over, to the East Bay where this went down. And so it was weird watching this film because it was shot there and it felt very East Bay the whole time. And everything BART related seemed authentic. So I do think it was shot on location, even at the BART stations, just because it felt real. What I think was the hardest about this film, and I guess I'm just going to go first, is they show you in the first couple of minutes this guy gets shot, and then of course if you remember the story, I was like, oh shit, I remember this guy died from this. Or I think they even say it in the opening line, he was killed. But that this is not good for this character, and yet you get to watch him go out through his day making these good slight improvements in his life, right, where he's got all these potentials. And every time he had a potential, I wanted to die inside. I was just like, oh, are you kidding me?
Yeah, or he had like some moment where it would have deviated from the path that he was going on, that we all know he was happening. We're like, like the moment where like he didn't even want to like go
to the BART, you mean?
To the like to the 4th of July,
or to the 4th of July thing.
Oh,
right,
yeah. Like, man, just like, yeah, just that one moment.
So what were your thoughts on it, Brian? That was just some of my initial thoughts.
Yeah.
We'll start.
So this is like the second time I've seen it. Loved it the first time. Still hits this time. And this time I was paying more attention to like my anxiety during the film. Like it's I was pretty anxious throughout the whole thing, just because it's like, it's all these like little moments. It's almost like, it's like a ticking time bomb movie the whole time, yeah. And like, yeah, it's just like, and it adds to that anxiety when there's those moments, that it could have deviated, or there's all these like possibilities, but like, nope, we know, you already know what's going to happen. Like, it's not going to, it's like hard to watch. And just like, and again, this is another film that is, we see time and time again today, as far as like what's happening in the world. I mean, just like immediately, like those police did that same maneuver on him as they did on George Floyd,
right?
And you're just like, why is that a thing? Why is that what you like? You need that for someone to be immobile? I just don't understand. Like, that's
they also yelled at him to roll over when his neck was being crushed.
Yeah, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, he can't move.
Right.
Like, it's so stupid. It was just making me so like, just anxious the whole time. But
you're right though. That's like what makes it uncomfortable. It's like we just saw this, like literally.
Yeah.
And it caused an upheaval in this entire country, and every time this happens, it does.
It was interesting too. Like, they were showing, like people were shooting it with their phones, like, and it just goes to show, like, that's kind of always been a thing as long as we've been able to, record things, even though like the phones back then weren't that great, and I almost think like That well, we can get into that part later, but yeah, I still loved it this time around, and even though it's hard to watch.
How about you, Tyler? What was your initial impression?
Yeah, this is my second time as well, and I was kind of like, that's what I was paying attention to see like how like I felt like checking my anxiety about it and like watching it. We talked about empathy earlier, because like at the core of it, it really is about a person who's just trying to do their best, and like I think that's what the message is. It's like on top of this system that is working against them, they're also just trying to do their best. And unfortunately, you know, so they did, I think Aina brought it up. They did shoot on location, and we learned in class, Ludwig Göransson, who's the composer and who has been like with Ryan Coogler forever.
Yeah.
They actually, I don't know if like it's not a typical thing, but I don't know if it's the sound recording artists or whatever. They actually had them on almost every day of that shoot. Like, so they recorded the sound of like the station and the train. So like that was like super important for them to get the real sound for it.
Yeah.
Even being downtown San Francisco, there was sounds that were very indicative of being inside the large city.
That's so cool.
Because it's definitely, you know, it was weird. And most of the times I was ever in San Francisco, it was always at night. So during those scenes, I was like, oh, this is kind of weird.
Feels like
I've been down there at that time, you know, just doing things. I wonder if the real events line up exactly with the events in the film, because there's always
I was just gonna mention
there's a little bit of that sometimes, which obviously we know the station was used, but the woman that asks for the fish fry recipe,
that's exactly what I was gonna mention. I feel like I feel the same.
Was she really the woman that filmed the film that we see? Did that really happen? If it did, great. It'd be interesting if it did. That would be very interesting that his day kind of happened that way, because it can. It really, like, life is that way. But at the same time, also the same night he runs into the guy he was in prison with. That seems more likely as the thing that really happened than the lady. But they had to keep this. You know, there's always movie need to kind of keep the same characters. So if it was a liberty, that's fine. But I'm curious.
I feel like it was a character moment for Michael B. Jordan's character, and like I feel like just like what you're saying, I feel like she was a story. She had a story function, like she wasn't an actual person, but but also as a way to like develop that character.
Right.
I feel like some of them were like, that's the thing. It's like the way they had structured it. It almost felt like real accounts. Like I even like the scene with the guy letting them use the bathroom. It was just such a normal, everyday thing. But like it still says something about his character. Well, the person, not the character.
Right. Yeah. And then like the pregnant woman that came up too is like, oh, I got another one. Like, damn. Yeah.
But that's just one of those real human moments where, you know, everybody's got to take a piss at the end of the night.
Right.
We're all standing around the bathroom waiting. It's kind of like after a movie or after a party or, you know, whatever it may be. And I liked how both the girls in the bathroom got to know each other a little bit and the guys outside got to know each other a little bit. And it almost felt like they both came together, like almost like they could go out to dinner after that. It felt
that was another moment of like hope there, you know.
That's the one that pulled at me the hardest.
That guy gave him his card and everything. It's like,
because that was the job he needed, right? That's the job that would have pulled him and T and his girlfriend, soon to be wife, out of where they were.
And then like him being only 22 years old, like,
my God.
This movie gutted me. I when I got to the end of this movie, I was bawling. I was not just crying a little bit.
Like he hadn't even lived a life yet. You know what I mean? Like
he was at college graduate age. Like that's it. He hadn't even. If he had gone to college, he still wouldn't have gotten a career or done anything yet. So
I was broken when they showed the real footage of his daughter at the end, just like standing there with her head down. I was like, man, dude, I can't handle this.
Yeah.
Well, and it was years later too. So it was 5 years later that they were doing that dedication to him there. Michael B. Jordan definitely shows his talent because the character of Oscar, or the human Oscar that existed, if this is accurate to Oscar, kind of had two sides where he could be very kind and very real and very empathetic and giving, and then at the same time, if you fucked with him, he would throw down in a second, and he showed that a couple of times. And that I think that the side that his mother was talking about in prison is what got him where he was in trouble. Had he not been that quick to fly off the handle, he may never ever gone to jail. Or we don't know why he was in jail. They don't actually ever say why he was there. But I think that we get to see two sides of him, and I think that this was the day where the good side of him was winning and really had a chance to take us, to take us, the movie viewer, to the next plateau. I think he was going to turn that lead. It really felt like.
Yeah. Well, and being in prison too can really. I mean, you got to be a certain way in prison, and that doesn't like go away once you're released.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so he's probably carried that part with him and tried to like, shake that off with as time's gone on. The dog part is like heartbreaking, but also shows a lot about him. Oh,
and how he covers up the blood for his daughter. How he talks about it was from work.
Yeah.
Does she tell T in the shower? Because she doesn't say it.
I don't know.
It cuts to black.
Like,
so
yeah.
I think she tells her.
There's no moment. There's no good time.
That's what I was thinking.
That.
I was thinking, there's no good moment, so why not just tell her right now?
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah.
I hoped through this whole film, like even at the end, I was like, let him live. And I know he didn't. And that's what's wild about good storytelling.
Yeah. You're like, that's the crazy thing. Like, even that's what's so good about it too, because even though it's based on a real thing that happened and what's already going to happen, even when you're watching, you're like, oh man, there's still a chance you can like pull through, because we've seen so many movies that do that, We're just like, and so in our movie brain, we're just like, oh yeah, this is a movie, but it's also based on a real thing. And there's like, you want them to pull through. And yeah, it's heartbreaking that, but it's important that we had to see this, you know what I mean? And again, it's another movie where like I said, with Do the Right Thing, where it's like, I wish you could say, man, remember when things were like this?
Right.
So glad this doesn't happen anymore. But
how many years separate the two films? We're looking at 34 years. No, wait, 24 years. 24 years separate the films. So quarter of a century, and the theme is literally identical. Like there's nothing. Even if we were to call it, I hate to call it this, but in a film, it is a trope. Like we're talking about a trope, and that trope has not budged in reality. And now I'm just sitting here thinking, like, what the hell can we do? Like, it's starting to get to the point, I think, where people just feel fucking hopeless about this in so many ways. And as an ally, I feel even more like, what the fuck? I'm here. I want to talk about it. We're obviously doing this, which I think is part of it. We're talking about it, and we're presenting these films and telling people to watch them. So I guess that's really a lot of what I can do, but I still feel stuck, and I want to be able to do something, and I can't, and I don't know how, and I don't know how to reconcile that, how to not do anything. But I'm also not the person every day dealing with that, so there's really kind of a privilege, obviously, there, where I can politely sit here and think about what can I do, but it doesn't really change shit, and it doesn't help anybody really. So I don't know. This is complex and difficult to talk about for sure. And I knew we were going to talk. This brings up real world shit more than anything else. We cannot just talk about the movies as if we're in a bubble.
They're just movies, yeah.
Right. Because all movies have something they're trying to say outside of that. So, what is Hyena saying?
I did have one like minor criticism that,
sure.
And it's only after, it's Michael B. Jordan, and it's only after I've seen other films, so this is totally like, when I first saw this film, I was like, oh yeah, no, he's great. And not to take away from his performance in this film, but I do feel like he has really grown as an actor since this movie. I will say that, because there's definitely things where I'm like really nitpicking it, just because I've seen it again. And also on the top of that, I've seen like Just Cause. If you've seen Just Cause, which I think is on HBO Max, man, that movie destroyed me. I mean, God, I was a mess in the theater. Good thing I was like kind of it wasn't with anybody. I was just like, yeah, it was
Niagara Falls.
But he's incredible in that movie. Yeah, it was bad.
As the
Yeah,
Ghost of Christmas Past says.
Such a good movie. He's really great in that. That's probably like one of my favorite performances of him. But that's my only like little criticism.
I do see.
Oh, you talk about Just Mercy, right?
Oh yeah, not Just Cause. Yeah.
No,
yeah,
when you said that, I was thinking of the video game. I'm like, Just Cause, Just Cause,
no.
Just Cause.
Yeah, Just Mercy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yes, Just Mercy.
That's also a Marvel director.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I do see why Coogler picked him for Killmonger, or at least agreed with the casting director on that. They obviously worked really well together, and why not bring back somebody who has screen presence? And of course, this is him kind of scrawny. Like he's not he's the built-up superhero we know now, or the supervillain, if you will.
Or his Creed,
right?
Creed form,
or Creed, yeah. You said Creed, which immediately made me think of the new Creed that's going to have
Jonathan Majors.
Yeah, Jonathan Majors.
Yeah, and then of course my brain went straight to the fact that Ant-Man the Wasp is big right now. And you've got Jonathan Majors, who did Men's Health, and then you've got Paul Rudd, who did Men's Health. Did you see the Paul Rudd interview where he was like, it was him and Fallon, and he was talking about the comparison of their men's fitness. You guys got to just go Google that after this. It is hilarious. Like they put the two photos next to each other. He's like, oh yeah, he's just working out, in the morning, no big deal. And Paul Rudd's just sitting in his jacket, like, check it out. Anyway,
he's like, I'm in my 50s. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, Paul Rudd did mention how much more difficult it was to get in shape for this time around for him.
Dang.
Yeah,
how Hugh Jackman is getting in shape for Wolverine again is beyond me, but whatever. That's
I don't know. I guess he's shown it too, though. Like, and Arnold Schwarzenegger comment is like, he's looking good. So
when Arnold says it, you know it's true, because he was he was a kind of a fickle bitch about his body back in the day.
Oh yeah.
If you guys ever seen Pumping Iron, you want to see an Arnold Schwarzenegger you never thought you saw, go watch that. He's very different. It's much more like the real guy in that movie.
The pump is like, that documentary is nuts. I'm like, what?
Anyway, yeah, it really is. It's nuts. I love how you said that. Because never mind. If you haven't seen Pumping Iron, that joke will go right over your head. So, back to Fruitvale Station. I think the part that makes this movie even harder is that everybody feels like they're just a person you've met at the grocery store, or that you could meet on the BART platform, or wherever, because they're just people. The scene where they're having his mom's birthday, and I love that he goes and gets an all-white card for her because she hates it, in order to torture her. He does it every year, apparently. Which I loved, and it's just a little element, a little piece.
Yeah.
But that whole dinner scene and just watching them, pray together and be a family together. I think those moments in these kinds of movies are what drive everything home. If we don't see them bond, then, when he does die, it's not going to be as impactful. When his mom said, "Take the BART," I wanted to throw up. Like, I was like, she's going to blame herself. She's 100%.
And she does.
Right. And I get it.
Yeah.
I was holding my daughter when I watched this movie. So seeing her with her son at the end, I kept thinking about my daughter and what, and I really shouldn't have, but talk about empathy. Like, I put myself in her shoes, what that would be like if it was my daughter laying on that table. And I was wrecked. Like I said, I was like snotting, and like, it was pretty bad, but this is another important film. I think it's another film that absolutely should be watched. I don't know if this has the element of study that Do the Right Thing has, like where you could really talk about it in depth. You could probably do a documentary just on Do the Right Thing.
Yeah. Well, the thing with what Do the Right Thing has, there's a lot more, because it's not based on a real event.
It's
there's a lot
fictional,
more.
like it's
yeah. There's a lot more like metaphor you can inject into it, and all kinds of like poetic things you can throw in there. Where this one is really just raw, and you are seeing a real thing that went down. So you can still like analyze a lot of like how they decided to, like, what point do we start, the film and everything? And I think it was a good idea to like, let's start like, just make it a whole day.
Where
leading up
and
to.
we're going to start from the day beginning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And don't they start at the same time that he passed? Like they start at the same 9 a.m. in the morning? Isn't it roughly? I don't think they say the time, but it feels right around the same time in the morning.
Right. Yeah.
When we meet up with him. I think the one criticism I might have of the film is when they cut away for him to go to, when he was thinking back to prison, it felt a little odd to me. It didn't feel like, obviously it was a memory, but it didn't feel like the right place for it. Or maybe it would have felt right if he had been telling somebody about remembering that. It was just an odd artistic choice to just cut from him staring at the ocean to his prison time and then back, which, obviously you get that it's a memory, but it just felt a little jarring. And it was obvious that we needed that plot point with the other prisoner. And that's really all the reason we had for that whole scene.
Oh, yeah.
And we still get to see him with his mom, and we understand their relationship and how it's grown since then. So I won't deny that, but I still don't feel like that was as crucial to understanding the pain as the family dinner was. So I'm that's maybe the one thing I would have changed.
The family dinner, I think was more impactful as far as the family stuff goes.
Right.
But like, even though I've already seen this, that moment when you see that other prisoner on the train, I was still like, oh shit.
Yeah.
It was like, even though I knew, it was like, oh my God. Yeah. Like it still like hit me. It's like, oh damn it. Like this is where it happens. Like, yeah. Man. Yeah.
One of the greater moments I loved when there was some expectation.
Oh, is it better than my moment? Is that what you're saying?
The what?
Oh, is it better than my moment that
totally.
I just mentioned?
Way better than your moment, dude. No, the moment I really loved in the film, I think the most, was the celebration of New Year's right at the time on the train, because they had no choice. And I loved how he pulled out his phone and people could barely hear it.
Everyone got together.
And then the guy coming in, they were all like, who is this kid? What's he doing? On their suspicions. Yeah. And then he pulls out the speakers and then like they all start jamming. That was such a beautiful, brilliant moment and just a human moment where you just see that it doesn't matter where you are. New Year's, we can all agree on New Year's and say Happy New Year to each other regardless. And it just, in another one of those moments where I was like, oh, and he had that good time. Shit.
Yeah.
Shit.
Just how fast like things can like change.
Yeah. And this is true. Like, every time I think about my own mortality, I always think about the fact that it could happen in seconds. And then I look at how seconds, is just very short. And then I go, damn, it's hard to think about how it can just turn that fast. Can we talk about the cop that shot him and how he only got 11 months? So there was this was early because we've heard this argument before. Oh, I thought my taser was my gun. And we've heard that.
Oh, man. Yeah. Since. Like just recently, we've heard that.
Right. And of course, most police will tell you that that's not how it works. They're trained very specifically to have them on specific hips, which means that either that guy was really jumpy or more. I always just assume more. That's just me. I'm a cynic, but I haven't seen this go in a positive way ever. So I just, it's kind of like with celebrities. If I get told another celebrity did some fucking awful thing,
oh yeah,
I'm never surprised anymore. I'm like,
well, it's like the whole Ezra Miller thing where there's like all these things have come out about him, and some people are like, don't know what's a rumor and what's not, but it's like, yeah, but he's starting to plead guilty to some of it, so I'm thinking it's all true. So yeah,
right.
And then we got to see two of them in the Flash movie. Jesus.
Yeah, no, I watched the trailer too.
Why is there two of them?
That's a whole nother mess.
Yeah.
Yuck.
Kevin Durand, who plays the officer, the main antagonist of the film,
guy, man,
is a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
I really do love him. And when I saw him, I was like, oh shit, they picked the right guy for this.
Yeah.
Because he looked so menacing and so pissed off. But there was a human moment there too, where he realized he fucked up and should have not instigated this further. And that's why he almost looks at the guy and was like, what did you do?
Yeah. What the fuck?
And then goes down to Oscar and says, I'm going to hold the wound, and like trying to help him at that point. Which is weird to see that in these kinds of stories. Usually the cops are like we saw in Do the Right Thing, and they're just who they are. But
he reminded me of Sal, actually, the way that like when you realize like you fucked up, but it's because it's like at the end of the day, it's like you know it's wrong, but you have to actively be trying to
exactly you continued moving forward, like
and all because you were like what, annoyed. I don't even care what the reason is. You got on duty, and if you can't clear your head before you're on duty, you shouldn't be a cop. Like, I'm sorry, you just shouldn't be. If you don't have that ability, you're in the wrong position. I wouldn't want social workers to act like these cops, so why would, they need to have that level of chill, right, where they can deal with anybody. And cops don't. They just don't. They are taught to police rather than protect, I think, these days. Not to mention that just the whole militarization of police over the last 40 years. That hasn't helped anything. They're carrying around so many weapons and so many different tools to protect themselves rather than police the citizens, or protect the citizens.
Yeah. One, like the crazy thing too is if you look like at the cops just in Do the Right Thing, like what they're carrying compared to like cops today, like they just had like batons and like a gun, like
and like a 6-shooter, right? Not even like a 9mm, none of the modern stuff. That was like kind of like the last time we got to see 80s New York cops in films. It was, there are probably a few more, but the cars got smooth and round after that instead of boxy. But that's a very good point. And you've seen the meme, right, where it shows a cop in just the dress blues, or not dress blues, but just like the walk around blues, and then the ones in military outfits, and you're just like, this is the different world than we used to live in. And these days, cops kind of just go after anybody that isn't my skin tone, it seems. At least it feels that way. Another privilege, when I get pulled over by a cop, it's more like, am I going to get a ticket? That's all I ever think about. Which is, it's unnerving, but poor me. Who cares? I'm sorry. I got nothing there. Go ahead, Tyler. Looks like you got something.
Oh no, I was just gonna like. This is just for me when I'm driving my car. And sometimes I see like the LAPD and I'm like, I'll just be like, I hate you. It's just like, it's crazy how like just don't respect, man. Like it's so hard. No. It's hard to like even. I don't even like if there's some kind of like trouble going on. I'm not black, but from my experience as a person of color, like I don't really. Like that's not my first thought. I'm like, where's my people? Like, who's gonna help? Like, are we gonna do something? Because they're clearly not gonna do anything. And even if they do, I don't want them to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No.
I just feel bad for kids, man. Like kids growing up in like nowadays. Just
Well, now it's worse in a lot of ways because it's not just that the cops are awful, but now. With social media, there's a political aspect where people will attack you openly about your views and where you stand as a person, even just for being a person of color and existing. And Tyler, I know that you've talked about this a lot on your TikTok, where just being a person of color and having an opinion on film will have people right up in your shit, just talking shit and telling you how you are wrong about whatever. Regardless, because they just feel a need to, and that's got to add to another layer to all of this. Where
my favorite thing is like, oh, you'll never be a director. I'm like, why did you bring that up? Like, what was that about?
You've been told that.
I don't even. That's not even like. But that's like not even that mean compared to what I hear like people say to some other people. Like,
I'm pretty lucky. Like I've never really, knock on wood, I've had a pretty good experience with that regard. I've had a couple like earlier in my TikTok experience, I would like fully engage and stuff like that too, where that's like a mistake. But also I'm just like, what? What?
Right.
I was like, what? It's just like no one. People just don't get it. It's like and if you're like someone who is like actively working on themselves too, and like is like trying to like support someone else, like there was a comment I made recently, and I talked about, it was basically involving like I think like a woman's experience, and I was like, this is why, like, I think it was about like dating, how like women had like, some women out there on TikTok have this like certain expectation or perspective, about what a man should and shouldn't do and everything. And I was like, this is why like patriarchy is bad for everyone. It's, it needs to be kind of like removed. And like I talked about, like it sets up like all these things, and then someone else commented on it and said, no, the patriarchy has been around since like, it was never set up or something like that. It was been around since like the since like the Stone Age or something. They just went off on this like really like wild tangent of like that had nothing to do with what I was talking about. And I'm like, that's
So
you just become the jumping point.
Yeah, you totally, I
As
was like, I didn't even respond to it. I was like,
as a sociology major, I'd like to say that cultures are varied around the globe, and there are plenty that the patriarchy is not the first choice. And that's true throughout history as well. Now, it has been a lot of the norm because stupid big thug men have gone out of their way to, promote that because they physically could. But in a modern world, shut the fuck up. No, like that's bullshit. Like that's, I'm sorry. That's a whole nother discussion that gets me mad. It's just like,
that's why I love movies like this. Like at the end of the, like at the core, it's like everyone, guys, we're all just people,
right?
Trying their best.
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing too about like I really love the 4 agreements, and like one of them is like always do your best. And the thing is though, your best is gonna be different day to day, moment to moment. Whatever your best is in that moment is all you can do.
I love that. If 10% is all you can give, that was literally your best today.
Then
and that's okay.
Awesome.
Some days laying on the couch is your best.
Yeah,
go for it.
If mistaking your taser for your gun was your best, you might have to rethink about it a little bit. But it was your best.
If you're a cop, these rules don't apply. You need to put your best foot forward, you actually call out that day.
Yeah.
Like yours needs to be 100% or not at all.
What your best is.
Period.
Yeah.
Very clear.
Well, it's hard. I'm like, but you chose.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't understand that one. You chose this career. Nobody has forced a single police officer in this country to be a police officer. Not one of them. It's the idea that you think your job...
you can leave anytime.
Right. Your job is more important than people's lives. Fuck you. I'm just going to say that. I'm sorry. No, it's not. Ever. There's no... This is, again, where sometimes things are literally black and white, and this is one of those. There is no... I'm not bending on this. And I don't think a lot of people are. The downside is we don't have the power to stop it yet.
We don't. That's why man got 2 years, by the way, and only got 11 months. That's,
good behavior, right? Involuntary manslaughter, because he convinced a jury that his taser... Like, come the fuck on. Like, I've cursed more in this episode than any other episode, but I think for good reason. Because it just makes me mad. It just gets me angry. And sad. I get both. Which is a really strange way to feel. It makes you feel hopeless when you're angry and sad, right? It makes you feel like you can't do shit except just be more angry or more sad. Which is not cool.
That's just being human.
I guess that's true. I mean, you're not wrong. Let's see. Ray says to all the movie things, you are correct. Some people literally don't understand that the patriarchy is absolutely terrible for everyone. In our culture, it's literally why there are so many single women.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And the thing too about that, like she makes a good point about that, how no time in our history have women actually had agency and choice and able to like live on their own and be financially secure and just like, and like men can't handle it. They think it's like, oh, women have these like outlandish preferences or whatever. It's like, no, because they don't have to choose your crusty ass to like in order to survive.
Right.
That's what it is. Like, be
so,
better is all you got to do. Is like,
that's a good point. And on Ray's point as well, the concept of the incel comes from the patriarchy, not from the idea of equality.
Right.
If people were fully equal, when it came to gender or sex, then you wouldn't have people going, I deserve to have sex with you because I'm a dude. Like, what the
yeah.
That's just gross on its face.
Yeah. It just goes back to like everything, like what Tyler says, like we're all individual people, just relate to people on a like individual level. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really not difficult. I mean, I do it every day. Like, I'm sure I'll do it every day.
Well, there's probably something you have in common with every single person on this planet. You've got to find it, but you have it.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to find it, then what are you doing? Like, this is why I think film is a beautiful thing. Music is another one.
Yeah.
There are lots of things that you can find commonality with, and then you build off of that. And then you can start learning from each other's experiences. Once you've found the commonality, you can then go, well, what's different about us? And let's talk about how cool that is, that there are these differences. Yeah. I learned that one when I was very young. When I was 9 years old, I was doing something goofy that I started to self-judge about, right? And then I went, you know what? There's 7 billion people. I bet you somebody else is doing this right now as I speak. And as soon as I did that, I was like, I can be a weirdo and that's okay. And I've kind of just stayed a weirdo since then, because there's somebody else as weird as me, if not far weirder. And that's cool. We are going to run out of time and not be able to discuss this last film if we don't actually hurry up. I just looked at the time. I'm like, wow, time is actually flying. So I'm going to move us over to the pre-review right after we do a quick round of rating Fruitvale Station, and then we will get on to Judas and the Black Messiah. So let's start with Brian.
I'm going to give it a 9.
9. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah.
I am not copying you, but I'm giving it a 9. It's a solid debut too, like 26 years old. Solid.
Yeah, I agree with that. I will also give it a 9. Yeah. This is a must-watch movie because it will, open up your mind, I think. Or at least tell you the story of what could have been. That's it. Moving on to the pre-review. We'll be right back.
Biggie's pre-review brought to you by The Real Study, Sunday nights, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific.
Welcome to Biggie's pre-review. The pre-review is where I tell you about upcoming movies coming to movie theaters and beyond. This is for the week February 13th through 19th, 2023. First on my list is the horror thriller Swallowed. Swallowed follows two best friends on their final night together with a nightmare of drugs, bugs, and horrific intimacy. This movie stars Carter Smith and Jenna Malone. Now this movie looks quite fascinating. I love horror, so I'm always down for that. Swallowed has a limited release in movie theaters on Valentine's Day, February 14th. Next on my list is the romantic drama, What About Love? Two young lovers change the lives of their parents forever when the parents learn from the joyful experience of their kids and allow themselves to find their love. This movie stars Andy Garcia and Sharon Stone, amongst others. This movie looks great. I'm always down for some Andy Garcia. What About Love has a limited release in movie theaters on Valentine's Day, February 14th. Next up is Marlowe. In late 1930s Bay City, a brooding down on his luck detective is hired to find the ex-lover of a glamorous heiress. Now, this movie stars Liam Neeson, Diane Kruger, and the great Jessica Lange. This movie looks like it's going to be kind of a classic noir crime thriller. Marlowe premieres in movie theaters on February 15th. Now, I've been waiting for this one. Next on my list is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. In Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, it follows Pooh and Piglet as they go on a rampage after Christopher Robin abandons them for college. Now, this movie looks fantastic. It's got some great blood and gore, some interesting imagery, and honestly, the practical effects just look fantastic. Since all of these characters from old Disney movies are now public domain, get ready to see a lot of weird Disney-esque movies. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, has a one-day release in movie theaters on February 15th. Oh, here's another one I'm looking forward to. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne, along with Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, explore the quantum realm, where they interact with strange creatures and embark on an adventure that goes beyond the limits of what they thought was possible. Now, Ant-Man, of course, played by Paul Rudd. You also have Evangeline Lilly. Jonathan Majors is going to be a great player in this movie as Kang the Conqueror. The action comedy Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania premieres on February 17th in movie theaters. Next up is Emily. In this biographical drama romance inspired by the life of Emily Bronte, Emily imagines the transformative, exhilarating, and uplifting journey to womanhood of a rebel and misfit, one of the world's most famous, enigmatic, and provocative writers who died too soon at the age of 30. This movie stars Joe Alwyn and Emma Mackey. The movie Emily has a limited release in movie theaters on February 17th. Up next is Of an Age. Of an Age is set in the summer of 1999 as a 17-year-old Serbian-born Australian amateur ballroom dancer experiences an unexpected and intense 24-hour romance with a friend's older brother. Now, this looks like it's going to be a pretty hard-hitting drama, but it also looks like it's going to be a great film. Of an Age has a limited release in movie theaters on February 17th. Now it's time for something sharper. Motivations are suspect, and expectations are turned upside down as a con artist takes on Manhattan billionaires. Now, this is an A24 film, psychological mystery that stars Sebastian Stan, Julianne Moore, Brianna Middleton, Justice Smith, and one of my favorites, John Lithgow. Sharper premieres on Apple TV Plus February 17th. Next on my list is Devil's Peak. In this crime thriller set in North Carolina's Appalachian Mountains, 18-year-old Jacob McNeely is torn between appeasing his meth-dealing kingpin father and leaving the mountains forever with the girl he loves. This movie stars Billy Bob Thornton, Hopper Penn, Jackie Earle Haley, and Robin Wright. I gotta be honest, this crime thriller looks pretty intense. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Devil's Peak has a limited release in movie theaters on February 17th. Next on my list is The Integrity of Joseph Chambers. In this drama, a family man hoping to prove his survivalist capabilities and manliness to his family decides to irresponsibly head off into the woods and go deer hunting by himself. This movie stars Jordana Brewster, Clayne Crawford, Carl Kennedy, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. This movie looks great, and I'm down for anything with Jeffrey Dean Morgan. The drama, The Integrity of Joseph Chambers, has a limited release in movie theaters on February 17th. And last on my list is the Korean crime drama mystery, Unlocked. Another name for this movie is Stolen Identity. Stolen Identity is a realistic thriller that tracks the incidents that occur when an ordinary company employee begins to get her entire life threatened after she loses her smartphone containing all her personal info. Now, I gotta be honest, I love Korean cinema, and I think this one's gonna be hard-hitting and heavy. Unlocked premieres on Netflix on February 17th. Well, that looks like it's all for the pre-review this week, and I hope to see you out there.
We are back from the pre-review, and Biggie, I know you are not with us right now, but we do hope everything's going okay. Everybody get your thoughts out for Biggie. They should be good thoughts. He needs good thoughts at this moment. But that was an exceptional pre-review, Biggie. We really enjoy all of that. We get to talk in the background while that's playing and talk about what we think, which is awesome. So we're going to move on to our final movie of the film, or the final movie of the film, final movie of the night, Judas and the Black Messiah. This is the true story of Chairman Fred, who was basically the chairman of the Black Panther Party in Chicago in the late 1960s. And this is just post Martin Luther King's assassination that this takes place. It is about how the FBI essentially has infiltrated the Black Panthers in Chicago with an informant. And it is the story of that informant and Chairman Fred and what they go through. We're going to move over to the main wall here, and we're going to ask Tyler, what did you think of Judas and the Black Messiah?
This is my second time watching it. I kind of had the same thing I had with Fruitvale Station. For some reason, I was still totally anxiety driven. Like Daniel Kaluuya.
Yeah.
He's something else, man. Like, I don't know how.
I know.
The amount of like research he does, like, and like the work that he puts into like all of his roles. Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot for me to say that we haven't said about the other movies because they're very similar. This one did start off the same way that Fruitvale Station kind of started off with real footage, so that was that was interesting too. The movie looked really cool. Shaka King. I don't know if this is his. Apparently, he had like a really hard time getting this movie made at first, and then in interviews, I think he was pretty open about like, no, once it got going, it was good. Like once Warner Brothers was like, we got you, like,
yeah.
So
he's not got a lot in his filmography. He has done some shorts. He also did Newlyweds, which was a comedy, and then some TV series. It looks like, and then this. So really, he had one other feature film that he did before doing this. So, in a sense, almost like a freshman, like a 1.5, I guess, because the other one was a long time ago compared. So yeah. How about you, Brian? What did you think of Judas and the Black Messiah?
Yeah, I love this movie. This is my favorite movie of 2021. This is the third time I've seen it, and actually, I saw it. So when I watched it for the show for today, I watched it today, and I saw a Facebook thing saying 2 years ago is when I watched it. I first
watched on the same day.
So
that's great.
yeah, the exact same day I watched it. So yeah, so happy Judas and the Black Priest Day, everybody. Yeah, like Tyler mentioned, Daniel Kaluuya is like insane in this. Both Lakeith Stanfield and him are like at the top of their game in this one.
True.
I mean, he sounds like, Daniel Kaluuya sounds like Fred. Like his the way he speaks is like almost like exactly like spot on. I mean, it's amazing how he's like this, guy, the actor from the UK,
right,
who can like nail down this like very specific, way of speech and mannerism. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah, that's like, and then Sean Bobbitt. It's just a gorgeous.
Oh my god! I didn't know they like took inspiration from like, was it Ectochrome or like the Kodak or whatever, like old film from that time, and I was like, whoa, that's so cool. That makes a lot of sense to why that movie looks the way it does.
Yeah,
it does have a very specific feel about it, and it definitely encapsulates that era in Chicago.
Yeah, and Sean Bobbitt's one of those DPs that, man, he's just like, he just does like banger after banger, but we don't really talk about him a lot. You know what I mean? Like he's up there, man. He's
not gonna lie. What else did he do? Like,
looking right now.
Yeah.
So there's one movie like that
Place Beyond the
I
Pines.
really love. What's that?
Place Beyond the Pines.
Yeah, I mean
that's one of the.
He's done a lot of other stuff, but
right, that's one of the big ones.
Yeah, but one movie that I love that not a lot of people talk about is directed by another cinematographer, and it's dang, I'm forgetting the name of it now. But it stars. I'll find it here.
Is it Queen of Katwe by chance?
No, it's The Rhythm Section, and yeah, it's called The Rhythm Section, and it's directed by Reed Morano, who is a DP herself. Stars Blake Lively, and damn, who else is in this? It's where is he? Jude Law. Yeah. And yeah, and he shot it, and it's like, man, there's this really great oneer in it with inside this car and everything, and she's like sliding down this like kind of like embankment and everything. Oh man, it's so good.
I slept on that movie. I didn't know if it was gonna be good or not.
I really liked it, man. Like it's a kind of a revenge thriller, you know. But you've never seen Blake Lively,
right?
Like, and she has like a British accent and everything, and like, man, it's crazy. I just seen her in this role, just like messing. And the thing is, she like makes mistakes and messes things up, but. But anyway, that's Judas and the Black Messiah, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. No, but it's but Sean Bobbitt's really, I mean, I love what he does.
I just saw he's shooting the Marvels.
The Marvels, nice.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he definitely there was more. There was 12 Years a Slave, Stronger. He's definitely got a lot. It's 57 credits as a cinematographer.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
He's been around.
Yeah.
So when I saw the cover of this movie, I didn't realize that it was about Fred Hampton. When I was in college as a sociology major, the Black Panthers are a huge part of what you learn about because they are counterculture. And so we did a lot of time. And one of the things we learned about was Fred Hampton's life and what he did for the Panthers. And then, of course, his death. So walking in, I was not unaware of what was happening. What I didn't know was a lot of this, you know, the kind of the rat, I guess, if you will, that was, you know, planted by the FBI. I knew of COINTELPRO. I knew Hoover did this. But I didn't know necessarily there was always a human element. Sometimes I thought it was maybe like the flyers they show when they go to see the crowns, and they show the flyer that the FBI was distributing. That's the kind of stuff that was very common among Hoover and his men. They would try to disseminate and put people against each other, and basically try to turn the areas where the Panthers were, have the people of the areas turn against them, which was very common. So the human element was new to me, but the story was not. As far as the way this movie plays out and is shot, it's brilliant. It's beautiful. It's haunting because it's a period piece, and because it's about a group of people that have, you know, constantly been subjected to being under the heel of the police or the white man, turning around and making something for themselves and showing that they can. The Panthers went out of their way to show that they could try something a little different. And succeed, and they were. I mean, even after Fred died, or was killed, I should say, brutally murdered, the Panthers went on for another 8 years. So it's not like he was the only thing pushing them forward, but he was in their area, right? But you're not wrong about Daniel. Like, that guy has shown that he is he is going to blow. Like, this is the beginning for him. Like, he's going to show us a long arc.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. Like, he's just been killing it.
Right.
You know, and like, he's just going to get better. I mean, it's going to be insane to see what else he's going to do.
Well, and, you know, my first experience, I think, is similar to other people's first experience, which was Get Out. Was the first time I ever remember seeing him. And then, of course, Nope, which is, of course, brilliant as well.
He was also in a Black Mirror episode that was really good.
That's where I saw him.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen that one. I've only watched like some of Black Mirror.
That one,
it felt like it was kind of a very repetitive show where it was always about paranoia and technology. Which is true, but I kind of got bored with that. The shocker for me in this movie was seeing Martin Sheen all of a sudden, but looking almost exactly like the real Hoover. But his voice is too distinct. There was no way.
It is, it's too Martin Sheen.
Right.
You know.
But it was, I'm proud of him for taking on this role, because this is putting Hoover in a real light rather than the bullshit light that you know has been fed to us over the years. And I like that Hoover's being portrayed this way, since DiCaprio and this kind of role and others have shown what a piece of shit he really, really, really was. And I'm always trying to tell people, because this is interesting because it starts to get into modern politics on some level, because Hoover and the government and all of that is why there's so many conspiracy theories to some degree, where people don't trust the government. And what's ironic is that they don't trust the modern government, which is the government that took over against this kind of bullshit. Not saying our current government's perfect, they're not. But this kind of stuff is not happening the way it did then. It may be happening to some degree, but I don't think it's happening on this level or to this degree. And it's interesting to see that we're now turned. We've turned and pivoted, and we're looking back now. And it's interesting because Rage Against the Machine is something I always think about when I think of Hoover, because they literally bring him up more than once in their songs. And this is the machine that they were raging against, right? This is what they're talking about, especially in Wake Up. This is literally what they're talking about.
I love the people that don't get Rage Against the Machine. Like, they've been rocking out to Rage Against the Machine for years, and they don't. Like, it just goes over their head.
Right. They're just
They're
like,
what? They don't talk about that.
They hear that. They hear the guitar. They don't hear the lyrics.
Exactly. It's
right?
like, man.
I mean, I was one of those, but I was like 7 or 8. When I was
yeah, it's different. But in a sense, weirdly, much like Spike Lee, Rage Against the Machine was saying some of the same shit before anybody else was, and really saying it in a different way. I know that's an aside, but I think it's relevant because it's part of this. I think the person that sold this movie for me was actually, what was her name? The girl that plays his. Why did they get married, or are they just boyfriend girlfriend in the movie? I don't remember if they got married. I don't think they get married.
Married in the, at least they don't show in the movie.
What was her name? Is it? Oh no, say Dominique Fishback, who played Deborah Johnson. I was hooked on her the moment we see her on screen, the moment she starts watching The Chairman, and just has the guts to go right up into him and be like, "You're not doing this right. You got to try this a whole nother way." And I just loved her. I don't know. She's got a.
When he's like immediately attracted to that, you know what I mean?
Of course, but she's got a cuteness about her, but she's also got an innocence about her because she's not part of the Black Panther Party to the degree that she's just going to meetings, and then he brings her in, so she's actually like deep inside the community. And you get to see her innocence basically shed away throughout the film, which I think she's the backbone of the film in that way. Especially that look on her face when we see that awful moment where those two cops say that bullshit. But anyway,
I love that they show an aspect of the Black Panthers I don't think a lot of people like either knew or remember, but like the whole the like socialism ideas that they were trying to like put forth, like the free meals and the medical care and all this stuff they're trying to do for their community. You know what I mean? It's like, it just goes to show like that stuff we talk about today too, that we're trying to like talk about how like capitalism is like such a just, I mean, it just makes everyone a slave, to things, and how socialism, at least some socialism, would be just better for humans. You know what I mean? And that's what they were trying to do. But of course, even that was vilified and seen as the enemy. So, but I love that we got to see some of that, and it's like to these little kids that need it, like, and you're gonna like take that away. Like, it's just another little aspect of like, I just love those little details that they show in movies.
Well, and they're painting it in a positive light. I mean, they literally talk about the proletariat and how they could leave the country and go try again and try to start a proletariat revolution, which is straight up communism. I mean, like, I'm not saying anything negative about it, but that's not something that in the 60s people wanted to hear. Russia being what it was, or even still kind of is. It's weird how these movies are all still relevant in some ways. And not just these movies, but even movies we've watched in previous weeks where it's an older movie, but you're like, what the? Nothing's changed. Why has nothing changed?
Still happening. Like,
and we're all, like Tyler said, and like you've said, we're all just kind of hanging on, trying to just live our lives while the world keeps spinning and people keep making crazy decisions. And we're all just like this, living life like this is not easy, man. This is not a fun way to live life. But what can you do? People live through wars. Like, as they start to unfold, they start to normalize and live inside the war. I'm assuming people in Ukraine right now are still trying to play video games sometimes, or still trying to watch a movie sometimes.
Trying to have brunch.
Right. Just trying to have grandma's breakfast for birthday or whatever.
Yeah.
Because what can you do? You have to keep moving forward. It's wild. But
so the pandemic was such a crazy time when everything just like the curtains were down, everyone's like, what the fuck?
No, totally. It is like everyone woke up a little bit of like out of this like, trying to do the rat race thing every day of just kind of like just putting your head down and just trying to keep going. And it really was like,
I don't think TikTok
and a lot of people got scared.
Right. I don't think TikTok would be what it is without the pandemic. I genuinely don't think it would be. I think there would still be popular people on there, but I actually think the dynamic would be different, and there would be less people creating. And maybe some of the creators that are big now wouldn't have been, because maybe they still would have been at their jobs or whatever. They would have never lost their jobs. I literally got laid off that Monday when everything locked down and was unemployed for 8 months. I would be in a completely different career path had the pandemic never happened. I would still be in social services and working with people with disabilities. Well, now I'm in IT. So like I work from home. Why? Because the pandemic. Like it's wild what changes and how things change. Did you guys know this story before you watched the film? Did you guys know about COINTELPRO and the government and FBI and all that?
Nope.
So this was a new thing.
I knew of, Fred Hampton, but I didn't know like all the details around it. I didn't know about the whole like FBI infiltration and the informant. I didn't know anything about that. So yeah, this whole movie was like an eye opener.
Like, did you not know, but also it felt familiar somehow?
Right. Yeah.
You're like, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah.
When I had learned about him in sociology, we learned that he was killed in his sleep. What I didn't know was that sleep was induced artificially.
Yeah.
And that's brutal. And again, so going to the Bill O'Neill character, the Wild Bill character, if you will. The idea that human saw a documentary finally released about this, and when the guilt was real, he finally called it quits. I think I was saying this to Tyler before you got on before the show, but it's interesting to me that the way they show it at the end, this wasn't it. This wasn't the last time he informed. He kept doing it for years after that, which means that the money became more of a draw, and what they were giving him was more of a draw than fighting with his people. And that's an interesting character, or a person who literally believed what he was doing was right in the Panther Party while still betraying them at the same exact time. Like,
well, the thing is, like, we as humans do that a lot. Like, we have this duality, or this ability to have that duality and like justify both sides at the same time, and it's, I mean, addicts do it all the time. There's this dual life between an addict and like, or like someone that's trying to like have an affair, even they have this dual life. And there's even like people that have two separate families and they're able to lead these two double lives.
But I love them all, right?
That's it sounds crazy, but it's like, until you actually like start getting close to that, you're like, oh, this is easier than you think, and somehow your brain just, and then you start.
It's like uncomfortable watching that character, because like you do see a part of yourself. You're like, I've done like I mean, I know people on TikTok especially, but like they'll be like, I'm totally for like I've had a person tell me that like, oh yeah, I care about Pacific Islanders and Hawaii and stuff, and like and then they'll be like, oh, I want to visit there, like it's okay, right? Like, well, what you're doing now is exactly what you said. That's just people are, they don't even realize sometimes.
No, totally.
They're very much Bill. Not to that degree, baby, but
right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The scene where they asked him to hotwire the car is such a tense moment, and that you could tell they were not screwing around. Like, they were literally like, if there's even a hint of not believing you, they were just going to end it and call it good. Which means that the threats that Roy kept telling him were happening weren't unfounded. If you screwed them over, they would take care of you. At least that's what was implied. I don't know how much truth there is to that, because I don't ever remember reading about Black Panthers killing people. But again, this is still a movie, but there's also an element of, there might have been more that they dug into that we don't know.
Do you guys think they bought into it after?
What do you mean?
Like, in the car, like, like they were like, okay, cool, but like, do you think they like, there was a part of them that might have still suspected
the girl? Yes,
because like,
probably, I mean, and that's all goes to show you how close throughout this whole thing that he was of getting found out, like around every corner.
I think him,
like, he had to like,
I think him taking over as security chief, and I think him rebuilding after the fire really cemented them believing him, because he showed far too much persistence and help,
like leadership there too.
Because he even says, when Chairman comes back, he's like, it's all Bill, man. Bill did it all. Which I hear that and I immediately, I'm like, man, I would feel sick to my stomach hearing that. I would just want to throw up feeling that way. it's a strange
Jesse
character.
Plemons.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Jesse Plemons is awesome, and there's like I was thinking about him too, and like how far he has come from like Friday Night Lights. Like I didn't think when I watched, was obsessed with Friday Night Lights like most people, and when he came on there, like he was just kind of like he was great in it, but I thought that was it. I was only going to see him on the show, and that was really it. And then he's like, just again, like Daniel Kaluuya, just like giving all these incredible performances, even these like small roles. Like I love him in Game Night. Like he is so good at Game Night. Like, yeah, I mean, just like able to do these amazing things, and and he's so good in this one too. And
Fargo.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Was he on Fargo?
Yeah.
The second season. Right. I feel like
Second
people
season?
like sleep on it a little bit, but
Yeah.
that second season
with his now wife.
Interesting.
That's,
He's been in so many
yeah.
movies I've never seen. I need to go watch all these movies now
Yeah.
because I'm like, I haven't seen The Bridge of Spies. I haven't seen American Made. I haven't seen I saw Game Night. That's one of the ones.
He's in
I haven't seen
so
Vice.
much,
I haven't seen The Irishman. I haven't seen El Camino.
You've seen Breaking Bad though, right?
Yes,
Yeah, right?
I've seen all of Breaking Bad, but never watched El Camino. And apparently, if you watched today, you could have seen their last performance as those characters on the Super Bowl. So,
Yeah, in a commercial.
Oh.
So, and Bryan Cranston came out and was like, "Never again." I was like, "Yeah, but they give you Super Bowl money, so you don't need to ever again." So, like,
Right.
yeah. Anyway, I think it's time. So we should probably rate this film. I wish we could have spent a little bit more time on this film, but that is the way it goes. This is definitely, one that, again, I think all three of these films are like must watch for anyone and everyone, in my opinion. That's just me. That might hint to what I might rate this film, which I'll just go right into doing. I rate this film a 10. I think the performances are outstanding. I think watching Daniel Kaluuya, screw up his name, Kaluuya give the speech about the one that was clipped in the Real Study promo about revolution and revolutionaries. I wanted to jump in there and be cheering him too. Like I felt so much connection to his speech in that movie that it felt like the real deal. So 10. How about you, Tyler?
I'm gonna give it the first time I would have given it like a 9 or something, but the second time I'm like, yeah, this is a 10 for me too. I think it's just like so well made all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
solid. Agreed. So you're agreeing? You're saying 10 too? I just want to make sure. All the movie things.
Yeah, it's a 10.
Okay, I had a feeling
we got two full
10s and
a
9, but it's a consensus across the board on all three. So next week is kind of the opposite side of the coin, if you will. We will continue on doing movies by Black directors and actors, but next week is a focus on Black female movie stars or characters, if you will. So we'll be doing The Woman King, Wakanda Forever, and then of course Girls Night, and these are all, of course, 100% Black female led films, which is
so
awesome.
Funny how like Girls Night's in there.
Well,
it's like so
literally
different from
Lala's choice. So she said she wanted to be a part of this because we were going to watch Wakanda Forever back on February 1st when it first came out. She requested that we hold off, which I totally understand, and we are respecting that. And then the suggestion for Woman King was added to that, and then she was like, "Okay, these are too heavy movies. We got to find something to break it up." And her and I both went Girls Night, basically. So, that was
Girls Trip or Girls Night, or is that a different movie?
Should be
Girls Trip.
I said it wrong. Girls Trip.
Girls Trip.
Queen Latifah.
In
it. Not the Scarlett Johansson film, which is not that good.
Yeah.
So anyway. All right. Well, this has been episode 18, season 2 of The Real Study, and I thank you guys for being here. And thank you, Aina, for correcting us on the trip. But this has been one of several episodes that we're focusing on through Black History Month, and we're going to also have one on the 25th. So look for that. But Brian will not be here for that episode. He will not be here. Anyway.
We had a long ass plane ride.
Right? But you're going to have a great time, and you're going to learn some stuff and enjoy your job and all that good stuff. So anyway, you guys have a wonderful evening. We will see you next time.
Do the right thing.